Dips are one of the most misunderstood upper body exercises. Some people think it's the squat of the upper body. Some think you just need to change grip width or grip angle to change muscle focus. But all of those things are just touching the surface level. And today I want to dissect FitnessFAQs' new dip tutorial and his 10 best tips for dips, and I want to explain you what's actually happening biomechanically and why oversimplified cues can do more harm than good in the long run. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lois, I'm a streetlifting coach, and I help you achieve your goals. Over the last couple of years, I worked with over hundreds of athletes from different genders, weight categories, needs, and trust me, the issue that you had, I probably faced it already a couple of times. So if you are stuck right now, whether that is with pain, progress, nutrition, physical appearance, just let me know, reach out and see if my service is a fit. And if it is, you will be surprised what is possible with the right guidance.
Dips are the squat of the upper body.
If you're not doing this old school exercise in your workout, you're missing out. Today you're going to learn my 10 best tips for better dips. Let's talk about technique. The dip is an exercise that many people butcher. Here's 2 ways to perfect your form. If your goal is maximum performance, here is how you should dip. I want you to get into a hollow body position with your torso facing forwards. Then at your scapula, you're going to keep your shoulders depressed. This sets them in a stable position. Next is protraction. You're going to round your shoulders slightly. This technique emphasizes the chest and it improves your leverages, maximize.
So the hollow body cue is fine for core tension. However, when it comes to scapular position, this is a little bit misleading because rounding the shoulders is definitely not the goal. What's actually needed is a proud chest, a neutral starting position to actually leverage the pecs, okay? So for us to get proper lengthening of the pecs, the anterior chest wall needs to be open. If the shoulders are rounded forward, what will happen is when we drive the elbow behind the body is that the shoulders will roll forward and elevate, right? Instead of staying depressed. Now, this doesn't enable your pecs to lengthen under load when talking about protraction. And that is quite critical, especially when we're talking about joint centration, and the pecs are key when we're dipping. So if you simplify, collapsing forward, you just lose structural integrity and load the passive tissues instead of creating active stability.
Your mechanical efficiency so you can be as strong as possible. If your goal with the dip is to hit your triceps, you want to keep an upright torso with your chest up. Scapular position, pretty similar, but you'll find yourself going into more retraction.
This is also a common misconception. Retracting your scapula under load locks down movement capacities and can lead to anterior glide of the shoulder girdle. So more forward rounding of the shoulders, and an upright torso does shift more load to the elbow. Yes, that's true, but the scapula still needs to sit nicely on the rib cage. If the scapula can't glide on the rib cage and move dynamically, the movement at the shoulder will be restricted. And true shoulder extension comes from driving the elbow behind the body without forward rolling of the humerus, so the upper arm bone, not retraction cues. That is super, super important.
Type of dip uses more shoulder extension, which stretches your triceps and emphasizes this muscle. You can't get big, you can't get strong if the dip is causing you pain. So you need to choose a technique that feels good for your body. That way, you'll be able to progressively overload and enjoy the fruits of the labor of your dips. A common problem with dips is range of motion consistency. Many people do these little quarter or half reps when they're trying to learn the exercise. Then you get frustrated and you go way too deep for your body. How to find your perfect technique every time is using pause dips. This builds up isometric strength in that deep range of motion. It builds your motor control to understand where your body is in space. This way, with practicing pause dips, you won't even have to think about if you're hitting depth, because you automatically will. You're probably thinking, how long should you pause for? 1 second is enough, just to stop yourself in that position. Sweet. You don't need to be a hero and do 5 to 10 second pause dips. Don't go that extreme. Just stop, then go back up. Tempo dips are a game changer when you're...
Yes, I totally agree. Pause dips are a great exercise, especially to teach positioning, control, depth, and so on. They are working very, very nicely. The only important thing is that whenever you're doing those pause dips, is that you are focusing on an active bottom position, except that certain circumstances don't allow for that, like for example, doing pin dips. That's a variation of the dip that actually takes the load off the bottom position, but that's not what we're talking about right now. It's about being able to facilitate better scap movement and to increase your positional awareness.
Training. The reason for this is it helps with muscle growth. We know that that eccentric, that negative, is really helpful for growing your muscles because of that extra time under tension. Spending around 2 to 5 seconds on your negative is going to transform the difficulty of this exercise. Additionally, compared to just smashing out your dips really quickly, these tempo dips are super joint friendly. You're not going to be running into that costochondritis, shoulder, elbow, or wrist issues from going super quick. So there's a lot of longevity built into the tempo dip. Bands are...
Now I have to interfere because I don't agree with what he said about tempo dips. Slowing down a bad movement doesn't fix it, okay? You will need to be able to position yourself properly to start the exercise and allow the scapula and the shoulder to move on the rib cage. If that is not happening, if you don't have the ranges available, not even tempo dips will fix your underlying issue. So it's not just resisting gravity with brute force, but ensuring we're able to allow for a actual and genuine movement at the shoulder girdle.
Beginner's best friend for calisthenics. You really have to drop your ego and train within your means if you want to improve your dip. You're taking a step back to take a step forward when you're training with bands because it offloads your body weight. It allows you to use perfect technique, get that full range of motion, and train with sufficient volume so you can actually progress. With band dips, it's important you choose the right thickness of band that suits your level. If it's too easy, this challenge, it won't change you. Instead, you want to choose a difficulty that is challenging for 3 to 6 rep sets when you're pausing at the bottom as well as the top for best results. You've got 2 different ways of doing your assisted dips. The first way is just to kneel, go down like that, happy days. You can also stand on them and do it like this too. If you've got access...
So I'd like to agree with the bands. They are super useful. I also use them in my coaching, especially with beginners.
If you've got access to V-shaped dip bars, there's some unique benefits of this equipment. If your dips feel awkward and uncomfortable facing this way, try this way. As you can see, the bars are angled out in a 45-degree orientation. This externally rotates your shoulders, putting them in a nice, stable and strong position. For me, this feels awesome. I get no joint pain. I feel super strong. I'm heaving and hoisting heavy ass plates on my dips. And if you've got this set up, experiment. Find what feels comfortable and strong. Okay, so you're ready to progress.
So now we need to stop and interfere, simply because this is where things now get oversimplified. Grip width and the shape and the angle of dip bars don't automatically fix your shoulder position. They change joint angles, and that is a huge difference because you need to be able to assume a certain rib cage position so that the scapula can glide nicely on that rib cage. And if you're not able to assume that position, then the scapula cannot glide nicely on the rib cage, the shoulder mechanics will be off, and the whole movement will feel off. And you still could see that in his rotated dip, where he was rotated away from the pole. So in that more externally rotated position, his so stable shoulders looked quite unstable to me, to be honest, right? And it's not about this grip fixes that muscle or shifts the emphasis to a certain muscle. It's about finding a grip that allows your structure to move well through that range, whilst being able to assume proper ribcage position to allow for proper shoulder blade and shoulder movement.
Press beyond the bodyweight dip, but you don't have a dip belt. What do? If you've got access to a dumbbell, that's all you need to make your dips harder. Here's how. You might be thinking, okay, easy. I'll just put the dumbbell between my feet and hold it like this, or rest the dumbbell on top of your feet. It's not the best because you're limited by your tibialis anterior. These are small muscles, and when you're going heavy on your weighted dips, your shin muscles are going to fatigue before your dip muscles. Here's what you should do instead. Grab the dumbbell, put it behind the nook of your knee, curl your hamstring, cross your leg. You can have it straight or bent, and you can do your dips weighted, no problems. This is preferable because
So this is definitely a fun hack for some lighter loads, but for progressive overload, though, you will outgrow this quick tip very, very fast. So this tip is not scalable for serious weighted dips, and there is a reason why dip belts exist. So don't over-engineer for reviews, please. And I wouldn't.
The weight sits nicely in your leg. Your hamstrings are such big muscles, so you can just focus on those weighted dips to your heart's content. Now, if you do have access to a dip belt, here's what I recommend. With weighted dips, this is my biggest pet peeve that I see beginners doing. It's letting the weight plate swing all over the place as they're doing the dip. There's a famous saying, you control the weight, you control the dip. I learned this from the world's best dipper in the world, Matthew Zlat. He's doing 150 kilos plus on a dip, and it's for a reason. One of them is he's just controlling the weight plate, because the weight is an extension of your body. If it's swinging everywhere, your dip is going to be uncontrolled. If you keep this in place, you'll be stable, strong, and have better dips. A common weighted calisthenics mistake is having the plate too high on your weighted dips. This makes you more unstable and also weaker. Instead, you want to put the weight as low as possible towards your shins and even towards your feet. This lowers your center of mass, it makes you more stable, and it increases your strength. Now, I'm no physics expert, I don't know how that works, but if you try.
So I completely agree with the weight control and swinging plates part. You need to control the weight to control the lift. Otherwise, the weight is controlling you, and plate swing is usually a sign of poor positioning and a lack of tension throughout the chain as we execute the movement. Now, with the next part, we need to be a little bit careful, and what he said about it. Lowering the plate doesn't change how you produce force. It only challenges or changes your balance perception. So that doesn't actually make you stronger. It can help to make you feel more stable by lowering the center of mass, but strength still comes from owning position, joint control, and being able to express it, and not by shifting where the plates are hanging. And the plate position is actually highly individual. From my personal experience, some people are doing better with a higher plate placement, and some people will do better with a lower plate placement. Now, the plate placement is also important for the weight control and swinging. The lower the weight, usually the more stable your position will be. That's why it might feel stronger for him. but it doesn't mean it's the most stable position, because as you know, when it starts swinging, it will start swinging properly, and then doesn't matter where it is, it can throw off your balance.
By having the weight higher versus lower, the same weight will feel easier the lower it is. Variety is the spice of life. Rings are going to transform your dip. It is so much harder to push on an unstable surface compared to your parallel bars. It's what you call a self-limiting variation. It's harder because of this instability, and this instability will transform you in a few ways. I love ring dips because it forces good technique. If you're not controlling that negative, pausing in the bottom and having a strong lockout, you're going to be shaking, moving all over the place. So it's the perfect technique tool for people to master their dip, because you got no other choice. Compared to a parallel bar, you can kind of use momentum and cheat a little bit more. No compensation with the rings. With rings, you're going to unlock next level shoulder stability, enhancing your rotator cuff strength. You're just not going to get that from a parallel bar dip on a fixed surface. With rings, you have the luxury of changing your technique. You can set the straps wider apart if you're a bigger boy, or you can bring them in closer together to find what suits you. You can also change your technique. You can flare your elbows out more in the scapular plane, doing those Bulgarian push-ups to smash your chest, or you can tuck the elbows in to hit your triceps more. Okay.
So I have to agree, because I love rings, and another thing that we need to keep in mind, they're not going to be a universal fix. They can amplify instability, which can be a great tool, especially for self-limiting things, like if you already have good scapular control, it would be a great opportunity to challenge that. But for beginners, rings can multiply the bad habits and lead to compensations if not coached correctly, because that's what I've seen working with over hundreds of clients, getting people into my coaching that have worked with certain techniques over time, and it's super hard to get rid of ingrained habits. As you probably know, it is super hard to get rid of a habit, and especially if it's ingrained for a long period of time, super hard to get rid of. And yeah, so if you want to earn your way to the rings, then you need to be able to master ribcage positioning. You need to have proper shoulder extension without the shoulders rolling forward and the chest being open, so that the scapula can tilt nicely on that ribcage.
So you're struggling with dip mobility. You're finding it hard to hit that full range of motion due to tightness. Don't worry about doing these stretches, all this stuff. The best use of your time is to stretch in the dip itself. What you're gonna do is get in.
Also here, I have to disagree. Just watch my latest YouTube video. I will attach it somewhere over here. And there I went into the topic of shoulder extension. Now, shoulder extension is the position where the elbow is behind the body. And he says the best mobility drill to improve shoulder extension, what the dip does, is the deep position of a dip. Now, if the ribcage isn't positioned properly and all you're going to do is to dump the shoulders forward, so roll the shoulders forward, the further you drive the elbow behind the body, the more likely you're going to make your issue worse than better. So, keeping that in mind, doing deep ring dip stretches or deep dip stretches is not going to improve your shoulder extension if the base is missing. But if the base is there, dips are a phenomenal exercise to improve shoulder extension. But to move into end-range shoulder flexion, you need to be able to hold a stack position first, so that we have some space for the scapula to glide on the ribcage. If it doesn't, it will just lead to compensations and make the current issue worse than better.
Into the deepest dip that you can comfortably manage, you should feel a stretch through your chest, front of your shoulders, and also your biceps. And you're going to use your feet on the ground just to take off some of your body weight so that you can tolerate this stretch. And the key here is you're keeping tension on your upper body. This is so effective for improving dip range of motion because we're actually stretching in the dip itself. You're building strength at length and increasing your range of motion for permanent gains. 3 sets, 30 to 60 seconds of this dip isometric stretch at the end of your workout, and your dip is going to feel so much better. Varying your rep ranges is one of the smartest approaches. 1 day per week, you're training for strength, low rep ranges, heavy weights, increasing your force production. Another workout, moderate to high reps. Your goal is to build muscle, that hypertrophy, by training close to failure. Combining both methods is how you become a well-rounded beast.
Alternating rep schemes from high to low within a week is a very common structure that many people are running, but I do not think that is the best approach, especially if we are looking at beginners and people that are just getting started. The main goal should be to build the capacity and to be able to assume certain positions, because otherwise you will just accumulate bad volume, junk volume, and as I mentioned before, it will just ingrain bad technique, and it's super hard to get rid of bad habits. So remember, just focus on positioning the basics first before you start loading it properly. If you're already who's a more advanced athlete, you definitely can focus on those more nitty-gritty things like changing rep schemes within the week or from a week to week basis. But that is highly dependent on what you need as an athlete, because everyone responds to different stimuli.
Too short is one of my biggest pet peeves. When I see beginners doing this, I just think to myself, if you just rest longer, you would make so much more progress. If you're doing 30 to 60 seconds between your dip sets, your cardio is likely not recovered, but guaranteed your performance won't be as high as it could be. Instead, take a longer rest period. Anything from 3 minutes, even upwards, is completely fine. Use your intuition, wait until you're fully recuperated so you can dominate, destroy those dips. All right.
Okay, here's the takeaway. Dips are brutally effective, but only if you understand how to control your ribcage, pelvis, the scapular glide on the ribcage, the humeral movement, so the movement of the upper arm, and grip widths or changes in joint angles won't change your technique for the good in the long run. They will just mask poor movement strategies. So fix your position, fix your scapular glide, fix your shoulder mechanics, and you will build a strong and pain-free dip for life. And if you want a full breakdown of how I coach dips in my coaching, then reach out. I'm very happy to help you getting rid of your trashed shoulders. And if you haven't done yet, subscribe so you don't miss out on any new content. And if you haven't done yet, like and share for more content like this. And see you in the next